Hello, MangaMatt here again with the September manga update. Now that I'm back in the rhythm of things again, hopefully I got a better I got a better understand what I'm actually talking about here. Still got a little bit of backlog to sit through, including the new Tezuka stuff, which again I haven't gotten to yet because I'm trying to dig myself out here in backlogging. Which is why you'll notice, some series that had installments come out, I didn't do those because I just want to, write all at once. I don't know. It's a little easier for me to just all at once with a series. A little binge reading. All right, like for instance here, Seven Deadly Sins, volumes 20 through 22 here, which I still really like the series. I thought it was a little weird when it went through this one period where Diane, the giantess of the group, had like this amnesia thing, and then kind of got out of it. And also the stuff with the first two volumes involves this kind of sort of a tournament arc thing, but it's kind of not really because like there's kind of no reason for them to be in this tournament, but that one of the Ten Commandments, who are the next group of bad guys, are hosting, and it's just kind of odd. But it does kind of present this kind of neat sort of face off with some of the characters, specifically also showing off Elizabeth and kind of how she's sort of improved her skills and actually also showing off a little more of the sort of powers and abilities of some of the Ten Commandments, and what really makes them so formidable, and also a little bit of neat showing off of what's his name, the last deadly sin, Arius or Arian, Irion, what's his name, the lion sin of pride, who has the whole thing where he, as long as it's sun out, he's uber powerful, but when night hits, he becomes a wimp, which is kind of it's, I don't know, it's got a few kind of flaws going on with it. I don't think it's necessarily a perfect fantasy series, but I do like a lot of the fight scenes, and the characters are fun. So I mean, for me, that's a lot for me to go on, and also the fact that the characters are so extremely powerful, but at the same time, they're not there. There are ways in which they are taken out or defeated that aren't necessarily linear fashion. Like, it's not, my power level is bigger than your power level exactly. It's usually something that they couldn't predict or they didn't see coming, as far as how an opponent is fighting them, and they have to use a different strategy. So I do like it for that aspect. And also the implications at the end of the last volume with Meliodas, basically being completely overpowered by the rest of the Ten Commandments, who all show up. Who, of course, Meliodas is basically the Goku of the series, but unlike Goku, where Goku is sort of, he's kind of idealized. Like, Meliodas at least has a few issues. Like, he's kind of a perv, and he also sometimes is a little too. He's naive, but he's also kind of dim, and he's kind of a great at combating, but at the same time, he's made mistakes in the past, and that does lead to believe that he'll make mistakes coming up, and that a lot of that can come back to get him. So I don't know what to say as far as that goes. For anything else. Next up, we get I Am a Hero, Volume 4, Omnibus 4, featuring Hideo and Hiromi, the two main characters, sort of dealing with this kind of new society that they've wandered into, where at this point Hideo is taking care of Hiromi, who's kind of sort of a girl that he's into, but she's also kind of turning into a zombie. She's only partially zombified, and he's having to kind of take care of her and lead her along. And they've come across this society that basically lives on rooftops, and they basically sort of basically made their own kind of Lord of the Flies, Mad Max kind of society where they're if you don't follow their rules, they just toss you off the rooftop, and then you get eaten by the zombies below. And one of the things is, of course, Hideo has the rifle, and that makes him valuable. And it's interesting, like the fact that the Japanese, they don't, since guns are virtually banned all around, like nobody really knows how to use guns. So it's not as simple as, they take his gun from him. He does, in fact, have sort of a necessity to the people because he needs to show them how to use the gun because, he's like such a nerd about guns that he's like, no, if you don't hold it right, it'll go completely wrong. And they're like, okay, maybe you're right. I don't know. It's kind of funny in a goofy kind of way at some points, and then it falls into sort of they're going to a mall because the mall has supplies that they haven't exploited yet because they haven't had either the firepower or the manpower to really take it over. And in this volume, it starts with they've invaded the mall, but there's been some problems going on. The guy who took Hideo's gun he's not as good with it as Hideo himself would be. And Hideo just has like a few cool scenes where he's just firing, pulling him out, reloading, firing, pulling him out, reloading. Like, it's so cool whenever it's cooler for me when I see like a character who's just really good at reloading and firing than it is like just somebody who's just firing a spray burst like Rambo style. Like one of my favorite scenes has always for a guy shooting a gun has always been Terminator 2 Judgment Day when Arnold is on the motorcycle and he's just firing the lever action shotgun. And he's just like, and he's just twirling the whole thing around just to fire it again. That's the coolest thing I've seen. That next to that scene in the movie Hard Boiled, which, if you haven't seen, is an awesome movie. But near the very end of the movie, there's a dude who has this weird-looking bolt-action pistol. It's the weirdest-looking pistol. I've never seen this pistol anywhere ever before or since. But basically, it loads rifle cartridges into the front, and then you slap the barrel in place and fire it, and he's just like dumping the chamber out, and it's single action bolt action. It looks incredibly inefficient as like a murder machine, but it just looks cool. And and of course coolness trumps everything else when it comes to style. But regardless, they get out of there with the whole mall thing happening, and he manages to come back around and he rescues this other girl he met on the way, and they get in the car and just drive off. That's basically that volume is Hideo becoming awesome, and he gets out of the mall and they drive off. But it's cool. I really love I Am a Hero. Let's see, moving next, now we have Princess Jellyfish, Volume 5. Yes, Volume 5. Which, again, I love Princess Jellyfish. Like, this whole volume is just everything fun about this kind of premise, where you have Tsukimi, who Shu, who is Kuranosuke's brother, has admitted his love to Tsukimi. But, of course, there's just this hilarious scene where Tsukimi basically goes into a delusion where she's convinced that that Shu didn't actually say "I love you." That he was actually referring to like something else entirely. Like they do this whole thing where they kind of, it's one of those things where like, you know, if it was in the original Japanese version, like they would show that, you know, the word love could be misinterpreted as like a different word, and then she thinks it's that other word. You know, the equivalent would be like saying, you know, I want to, I want to. The equivalent would be like, you know, I love you, and then she would be like thinking, did he say I love you, or he meant I love blue, like because the tablecloth was blue, and you know it's such a nice night out, and he just felt convinced of telling me how much he loves blue. That is what he meant. He didn't mean I love you. What was I even thinking? Like, that's the kind of logic that she was following, and it's so adorable and fun. And I love Tsukimi, and how it basically takes like a second introduction, and then it takes the other people in the room at the same time to basically say, Tsukimi, are you dense? Are you legitimately dense? Like, do you have a mental problem? This man just said he loves you. He doesn't mean that he loves you in a friends kind of way. He doesn't mean he loves you in a in like a any other kind of way. He means that he wants to be with you and he has romantic feelings for you. And it's so much fun. I love this more than just about any other kind. Like, if you're gonna do this series, feels very much like it was written by a woman, and it's about how women think. And and I mean, that's not to say that men can't write about how women think, but that sometimes it's a man thinking how a woman would think, and not how not a man thinking how someone would think who happens to be a woman. If you get kind of what I mean. Like, a lot of times I'll read some of these you know, stories where, you know, there's kind of this back and forth with a man and woman in a romantic thing, and you can kind of sometimes tell that it was written by a guy because it always follows these similar kind of patterns, and you know, it just feels more like this is kind of how I would expect a woman who's very introverted and very antisocial to act, and it just feels so genuine. It's like this is coming from someone who's been in that situation and has felt those kind of ways before. And then also all the other stuff with them trying to get their fashion line off the ground is also tons of fun. It's a great kind of thing where like it shows that women are into these things that are like, all the girls are into nerdy stuff, but it's not necessarily like gender specific nerdy stuff. Like, the one girl is into Romance of the Three Kingdoms, which is this, you know, fantasy series, this sort of fictional historical kind of series. I guess she could be considered as the closest to like a typical gender type casting of interests. But I don't know, the way she talks, she always talks about like how brave and heroic a lot of the main characters are, like Lu Bu and Zhao Yun and Cao Cao and all of them, which I only know them tangentially from the Dynasty Warrior game. So, you know, Romance of the Three Kingdoms isn't necessarily exclusively like a romance series, even though it says romance in the title. I think it's more of like kind of a general kind of like romances in like, you know, these are three kingdoms that are all deeply involved with each other, not in like kind of the lovey-dovey kind of way. And then the other girl is really into trains. And then, of course, Tsukimi is super into jellyfish. Not exactly just dresses, mind you, but just jellyfish in general. And, you know, she uses her passion of jellyfish to make dresses. And the coolest thing I like in this line here is, you know, they go in a little bit of a explanation about fashion and how, you know, you have the couture, which is, you know, the dresses and clothing that are straight off the runway, but that, you know, a lot of people can't either afford or want to wear that kind of clothing. And so then you need like a line of clothes that are like more casual and cheaper and easier to wear. And I love Kuranosuke thinking about how uh, he needs to create a line of clothing that women will want to wear, and specifically women like the women that live at Amar's would wear, like the kind of clothing that shut-in introverted women would want to wear out, because his opinion being that these are the most obsessed and devoted kind of women that you can have. We're talking about women that love being a part of a fan base, and his logic being that if you can tap into that, you're set. That's a completely untapped market, and they can be the most devoted fans you could ever ask for, and they will buy it and they will love it and wear it, and on top of everything else, he just wants to make clothing that the girls can be proud of wearing, instead of them constantly working to make clothes that they wouldn't want to wear, which is also very sweet. Again, it's a shame that this is going to end in just 3 more volumes, because there's only 16 volumes, and these are 2 apiece. But, on the other hand, I guess it's better than, going forever like Skip Beat, which I still haven't gotten into Skip Beat, and I don't know if I will. Like Fairy Tail. I don't know if I ever want to get into Fairy Tail or not. Now that it's ended, it's like 60 plus volumes. I don't know. But anyway, love Princess Jellyfish. It's fantastic. Then next we have Inuyashiki Volume 8 with the big showdown between Inu and Shishigami. The two of them just trading blows, just wailing on each other, and the two of them are completely matched. They can't stop each other for nothing. And 2 more volumes to go, and I still don't know where they're going with this as far as the two of them facing off. It seems like both of them, at one point, they both go into basically a kind of autopilot where their systems sort of take over. Like, I guess their consciousness, like, they knocked each other so hard, they knocked out their consciousness, and they just start fighting on autopilot. Still fantastic, great action series. 10 volumes is certainly much easier to digest than, your Gans, which is like 37, and that went way off the rails. And, Inuyashiki's already been greenlit for a live-action movie and an anime series, which both look like the live action is going to be a 2-parter maybe, and then the anime is going to be, just one of those, 26 episodes and we're done. Maybe even 13 episodes. I think maybe they could, if they cut out some stuff, they could get 13, or they could stretch a little, get to that 26. Needless to say, I think it hits a perfect pacing, and I think it's a lot of fun as far as a very, non-traditional kind of action manga series in that way. Next up, speaking of non-traditional action series, Drifters Volume 4. Yeah, I was happy to see it finally come out as much as you were. With basically just the Drifters getting into like just this, fighting this one huge battle inside this city is basically what it came down to. That and also Nobunaga basically stressing the importance of guns in their military fight. Because again, it's not even so much, the deadliness of the guns. It's also just the psychological aspect of just having those guns and firing them, and the enemy just completely breaking rank because guns are just such a step up from what their opponent has. Their opponent is fighting all melee, and if you can break an opponent's spirit, half the battle's won right there. And it's just with Nobunaga fighting with the rifleman, and then what's his name guy? They don't. I forget some of these names. He has the weird long name. The Shinsengumi guy. Toyohisa. Yeah, that's his name. Toyohisa, the fighting with the swordsman and just basically the dwarves, and then the archer archer girl fighting with the other archers, and just kind of creating this whole kind of you know this whole kind of battlefront in the middle of this city to take on the other guys. Again, it's a lot of action, and I'm still not sure exactly where the series is going as far as just it being various figures in history fighting against other various figures in history. And also fighting dragons and stuff. It's just a lot of action, and I guess if I guess Hellsing was kind of like that for a lot of the series until it got to about halfway, and then we've got Nazi vampires, and then it became a plot at that point. So I mean, it's still good. It's still really good. I love it. It's just when the volumes are taking so long to come out, I forget sometimes kind of what happened in between. Then next up we get the ancient Mage's Bride. Wait, or Magus. I say Magus, but apparently the trailers for the anime they're calling it the Mage's Bride. I don't know. In any case, we get to volume 7 here, which again is a lot more of these kind of self-contained stories, especially with a lot of it involving some past histories with some of the other main characters, and also dealing a little bit with kind of how the different classes of mages all kind of interact with each other. Really not a lot done with Annihilus, well, in here, which is the name of the main mages. And then the girl herself kind of does it. It's kind of a passive kind of volume, mostly with just some stuff happening with the main bad guy, who's basically starting to gain some powers and abilities on his own. He's been basically getting a hold of various magical elements and dragon stuff, which is like powerful magic apparently, and it's become it's kind of shaping up. It's mostly about, again, the girl kind of learning about magic and how she has a great potential to be a magic user, because she has an ability to sort of collect and store magic, but without training she would just it would all just kind of leak out of her, and she would die because she has no control over how much gets drawn in or put out. And so a lot of times they're used as basically like a magic battery for alchemists to use in various experiments. And so typically they don't have a long life, but Annihilus believes that if he's going to take an assistant or somebody as a student, it should be somebody unique and somebody that he thinks is a great potential. And his opinion is that Chise herself can do just that. But yeah, it's still really great. I can't wait for the anime to come out. I think it's gonna really be fantastic. Next up, One Punch Man, Volume 12. Yes, I've made the jump from digital to physical. It was basically when I saw it come up, and it was coming up before the digital version was coming up, and I just said, screw it. I might as well just go physical copies from this point on now with the series. Still looks great as far as the look goes. Especially love the fight with Genos versus the Cockroach Man here. And obviously that's supposed to be, I guess, kind of a homage, I think, to, again, like the Kamen Rider stuff, and also maybe a little bit of Terraformars. That action series that features the main bad guys as being highly evolved cockroaches, and also the big reveal at the end that there's a greater evil that's sort of making its way out, to take on everyone again. Lots of fun. Always love One Punch Man. And then let's see. Holic Ray, Volume 4, which I thought this was going to be the last volume of this. It's not. There's apparently more to come. Again, this is one of those series that, like, Holic and Tsubasa Reservoir Chronicles, just... I was able to follow them up to a point, and then they kind of fell off the rails for me. You know, I guess I need to... I'm just going to try and reread them again, and then try to figure out, like, what's actually happening, especially because a lot of these volumes came out so far between each other in their sequel series. I just kind of wish that Clamp would pick a series and then stick with it. Like, they're also working on a sequel series to Cardcaptor Sakura now, when I thought that series was done. And, you know, it's like, oh, I guess you're not going to get back to X, the series that you just left hanging. Or Gate 7, another series which you just left hanging. All right, you're just gonna come back to Holic and Tsubasa, which, I mean, you seem to put a pretty good ending to, and you know, you're just gonna extend it out instead of finishing the series that maybe need a little finishing. But okay, what do I know? You know, I'm just a fan. But this series, you know, features a few stories specifically around Watanuki and sort of him trying to figure out kind of what he's doing while Shaoran and them are doing the Tsubasa Nirai Kanai storyline. Specifically, his decision on whether or not to take a certain magical red pearl item or not. And then, after much deliberation, he figures out a solution to getting what everyone wants in that situation. Because the way it was is that, you know, if he were to give it up to this one customer, that he would be having to take a cost from her that would be too much to pay. And then if he didn't, then it's like, you know, do I want to keep it? What would I do with it? And a lot of stuff. Overall, I thought it was an interesting volume, at least. You know, it's one of those where there's not enough plot, especially with how far along this has gotten, and you're expecting more plot to get in. It seems like the more plot that keeps coming in, the more plot it feels like it should have, but then it wants to try and step back and do kind of those one-and-done Holic stories where it's like, you know, random customer comes in, random customer wants a thing, and then, uh-oh, does he want the thing? It might cost him more than he thinks. I don't know. And I think the series has kind of gone past that and trying to rein it in, but I don't know. It's kind of it feels a little lopsided to me, but still feels okay. And again, I like the series. So I guess, what are you gonna do, right? Next up, we get Case Closed, Volume 62. Yeah, still going strong with the Case Closed. The standout story, I think, in this one for me was actually the storyline with Jimmy actually turning back into an adult again. You know, it's established in the series that there's this weird hang-up where when Jimmy gets a cold, and then he takes a certain bunch of pills, that he can then temporarily revert back to his adult self. And the Doc and Anita have both figured out like a experimental drug that Jimmy can take to possibly reverse the effects of the drug. And it's in its experimental stages, and Jimmy, I guess, accidentally took it thinking it was cold medicine, and then he wakes up, you know, as his normal body, and then also he has amnesia, and then Harley's confused, and he's like, well, okay, I guess we need to try and get Jimmy, you know, to remember himself before he reverts back to a kid again, and he still doesn't have amnesia, because then it's like, well, if Jimmy and Conan both have amnesia, then, you know, that's gonna there's too many questions. There's too many questions. Two people who happen to get amnesia at the same time. So, you know, that's going on, and then at the same time, there's a murder mystery going on, which the ending of that is, again, one of those endings that felt a little too ridiculous of an ending, especially when you think about kind of the coincidence involved with all these things lining up, and that Jimmy happened to be where he was at the right time, doing things how he was doing them. It was okay. It was an okay volume, and actually And actually, the teaser for the next volume actually has me more interested, which I have the volume, I haven't read it yet, but the setup being that Moore and the gang are driving along and see a guy, on the side of the road dead after having driven by them, and he's got strangulation marks on his neck, and he was the only guy driving the car. So at some point while driving, when Moore and them passed him, he was driving, but then just a short while later, he strangled around the neck, and he was the only dude in the car while it was moving, and it's like a locked room mystery, except it's in a moving car. I'm actually interested in that one. Case closed. You get 60 plus volumes. They're not all going to be perfect, but I'm just a big nut for like mystery stuff like that, and that's why I love Case Closed. I kind of wish that Kindaichi Case Files didn't get axed like it did. I wish I heard that series got just about as many volumes as Case Closed does. It's a shame that didn't keep going. Next up, we have Platinum End Volume 3, which again, I'm surprised this series isn't getting more attention. Given how much attention Bakuman got, and Platinum End just feels more like a spiritual successor to Death Note than Bakuman was. Bakuman, I don't know. Bakuman felt like it was kind of like Oba and Obata basically are working out all their stress and junk about working for Shueisha and their issues with Shueisha, but at the same time framing it in a way that maybe like it's like a backhanded compliment. And Platinum End feels more like a true next story by these guys, with the whole Angels giving 12 candidates with this ability they give them angel wings, they give them little diamond things that only they can see from each other. The red ones, you hit a guy with them, you hit a guy with it, and then they become basically your devoted love servant for the next 30 days. They do whatever you tell them to do except kill themselves or kill someone else, I think. I don't think they can kill anyone else, but they can't kill themselves. I think they can kill someone else. I gotta remember that rule. And then the white ones, which you hit someone with them, they're dead. They just dead like a heart attack. And some of the angels get all 3 of the gifts, some only 2, some only 1. And it's sort of a balancing act. If you can kill one of the other candidates, then you get their power, and then it enhances your own. And one guy has managed to get a lot of them together, and so right now some of the other candidates have decided to pull their resources together to try and at least stop this one dude from winning, because they think okay, of all the people, first of all, it's crazy that somebody would even want to win this thing. Like, anybody who says that they deserve to be the god is already like a crazy person and probably shouldn't be allowed to be God. It's kind of like Jerry Seinfeld saying, who really goes out and says, I deserve to be the president? Like, you'd have to be nuts to go out and say, yeah, leader of the free world, commander-in-chief, I think I could do that. I don't think there's anybody else who's more qualified to that than me. That would be a crazy person. So, that's why, Jerry Seinfeld says that he gives a bit of slack for some of the people when the president says or does something that's a little off or a little odd. He's like, he kind of can more relate to that, because he's like, you gotta be kind of nuts to want to just have all that responsibility and all that power and stuff, which, make a Trump joke, blah, blah, blah. Moving on. This series, I think it's fantastic. If you're a fan of Death Note, I think it's going right along those tracks of being another Death Note. But I think people are still more interested in Death Note because it was such a game changer. And Platinum End coming out now, so many years after the whole landscape of everything has changed, it's not as radical of a new series to see. which is why I guess maybe it hasn't gotten as much of a hype as it has. But anyway, that's just me. Then next up we get Captain Harlock, Space Pirate Dimensional Voyage. Yeah, that's a long title. But basically, this is, I watched a bit of the Captain Harlock anime that was like back in the 70s, and pretty much this follows the exact plot of that series. And I'm already happy to see on Amazon and places that, like, the original Devilman is getting a printing. Also, some of the Devilman series that were done later are getting printings, and then also Cutie Honey, and then also the original Captain Harlock is getting a release next year. This isn't the original. This is sort of a redo of the original series. So I'm really excited about anything that's old school anime like that, and I love Captain Harlock. He's, when I saw Emeraldus like a couple years ago, I was like, all right, we're in the ballpark. We're getting there. Let's just keep on trucking. Let's get all the way to Harlock Station, and here we are. And what I'm also happy to say is that for a lot of people who aren't necessarily old school fans, and even I can't defend this. Leiji Matsumoto is not exactly the greatest manga artist that's ever lived. I'm willing to admit it. He can only draw one kind of dude and one kind of woman. He's a little bit limited in his styles, and the rest of them he draws weird little chibi people. And for a lot of people, they're gonna look at that, they're gonna say this looks terrible, and they're gonna drop it because a lot of people, especially when it comes to comics and manga, art, it matters. And, I can't deny that. If you got terrible art, you're struggling that much more, especially if you're not like in a jokey comedy kind of thing where you can sometimes get away with, worse looking art or something. But in this, I'm happy to say that it follows the plot of the original Captain Harlock anime. I don't know necessarily about the manga, but the anime, it follows the first few episodes of that, where it's the invasion of the Moma people, the people who are basically made of paper. They're like these weird, the Mazons, which are these race of aliens who deem themselves to, who basically say that the Earth is theirs. They claimed it, millennia ago, and they're back to basically take their land back from these new Earthlings who have cropped up. And after after thousands of years, the only powerful space vessels that are even still around that can take on the Mazons is Harlock and the Arcadia. And Harlock has basically been exiled from Earth, and he's the only one that's willing to, go out there and fight on their behalf because, he still loves Earth. And I'm happy to say that the artwork is fantastic. It's fantastic while at the same time retaining the look and feel from, Leiji Matsumoto. You're able to see like a little bit of the style is still retained. I think it's a perfect subtle upgrade to Matsumoto's art style. You can actually I could tell right away that most of these characters would look utterly identical from each other. But with the better art style, there's actually enough that you could say like these characters have slight differences. And I think that if you're going to introduce somebody new to Captain Harlock and a lot of these Leiji Matsumoto series, that this would be the series to actually get them on, because you gotta change and adapt with the times. And for his time, Matsumoto had a vision and an idea, and he had to use what he had at the time. And that's just his art style, I guess, just hasn't progressed as much as we might have hoped it would have. That's not to take anything away from what he contributed as far as to sci-fi and manga, and both respectively, but Gene Roddenberry had the same deal when he transitioned from the original Star Trek series to Star Trek Next Generation. A lot of people say that those first few seasons where he was headlining it and in charge, that those were the weakest seasons of Next Generation. And then once he left, and also Will Wheaton left, the series became amazing. So it's kind of you take what works and then you try to throw out the rest. And for me, he kind of threw out the part that didn't help it, which was the subpar art style, and they kept everything else, was the imagination and the characters and the world that it created. So I highly recommend it for those people that have been wanting to get into something like Captain Harlock and these space opera-y kind of things.